M. The Media Project.
It is December in 2025. It is time to make predictions, tech predictions for Vermont Rural Tech at the Innovate02 podcast. I am your co-host, Scott M. Graves. With me in the virtual studio on the east side of the mountains,
Ryan Munn here, enjoying the brisk cold that we have and a little bit of snow cover.
Yes, I mean we've got for once. We're having the Vermont full-on experience for winter, which hasn't happened for much of our parts of Vermont, right, Ryan, for a long time. And so we're freezing our buns off, and but we also have a lot of snow on the ground, so that's really cool, and it's great for ski country. So we're happy about that, you know.
Yeah, I got to snowboard with the boys this weekend on Sunday.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So, you know, but we're not here to talk about, you know, snow and tourism and stuff like that, unless, of course, it has something to do directly, or maybe even indirectly for that matter, with the state of tech teams here and startups here in Vermont, and in a greater sense, all of rural tech clusters throughout the United States. To say the least, Ryan, we'll dive right in. I mean, what a year. I mean, what a year for tech in Vermont, but what a year everywhere. This is turning out to be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to keep tabs on the acceleration of tech in all senses, you know, from the generative AI, the applications of automation, the robotics. It's pretty incredible what's going on everywhere, and even more incredible, you know, what is happening in our rural state with some of the amazing startups and innovators that are grabbing a hold of these things and, you know, getting a foothold on the ground here and serving global markets.
Yeah, we'll talk about the good news first, and then, of course, we can talk about the digital apocalypse to come. But, you know, shout out more recently towards the end of the year here in the fall, Beta Technologies. For those that are listening that don't know what Beta Technologies is all about, Beta Technologies has a electrical powered airplane. Their technology will redefine air travel because it allows for a lot more of that sort of regional and personal flight, and it does it in a more affordable way, and of course a better for the environment means than ever before. They put out an IPO this fall, just a few months ago. It's hit really well, and I haven't looked at it in maybe 2 weeks, but it's maintained its value too.
Yeah, full disclosure, I bought the dip on Beta.
Okay.
So I do own some Beta stock, and yeah, they are, you know, with their Alia product, that's their kind of go to market. And what's really interesting about it is, you know, they are doing everything that you said, but their business strategy seems to also be heavily focused on some of the early opportunities in the market of delivering transplant organs and serving the medical demands in the region. And so that's really interesting that they'll potentially be able to have a range of 250 to 300 miles, and they're already building a strategy of multiple locations, planning to double their workforce, not just in Vermont, which has been growing substantially, but they're doubling their workforce is all these other locations are going to be opening up in order to service their their transport and their vehicles, the maintenance and the recharging and all the other services that go around, you know, what they can provide with this device.
Yeah, it is to me a very interesting niche market to go after, a target market to go after as your first, to show viability for the tech performance. At the same time, of course, you know, who's going to complain if, you know, if you're playing a critical role in getting much needed organs or other medical material where it's needed. especially in a place like Vermont or really this whole northern tier of New England, it'll drastically cut down. And I think it'll be a lot more reliable than doing it by helicopter, which I'm going to guess, I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to guess a portion of that kind of work is done now through life flight helicopters. And, there may be some pluses by doing it by airplane, as far as speed and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, I think speed, I think cost too. I think that their plane has a potentially lower cost and higher speed and efficiency to actually transport. A lot of organs aren't transported by vehicles, by, transport companies on the ground still. And
well, that's interesting. Yeah.
I think also just the availability is a key thing, is just adding another resource to that equation.
And this is because the plane can take off and land parallel, sort of like a Harrier.
Yeah.
It can be done anywhere. I know from my world of real estate development, I know of several developers who are breaking ground on large-ish or really truly large multi-unit developments throughout northern New England, and they're actually purposely building not one but several helipads. And I asked them why in recent reviews of those projects. Mm-hmm. And everyone said the same thing. It's for Beta Technologies. And I thought, well, there you go. I have to tell you, I'm still sort of enamored with what it'll do for personal transport from the standpoint of when you're doing things like building tech hubs, as I am. You take a look at my hometown here, Rutland, Vermont. We have an existing airport, and so it's within close proximity to the city. It's just outside city limits. Close to Killington. And so, and right now there's an existing very inexpensive round trip ticket, less than $200 or so, to and from Logan Airport, Boston. And so when you think about, adding places that you can go on the map, they could be major airports. They could be no airport at all. They could be some of those helipads, but to have all those options and to be able to live and work in a desirable place and take that as your primary way to get around, to see clients and so forth, that changes things a little bit,
Yeah. I mean, similarly, we've got the Lebanon airport not too far from here, pretty affordable round trip to Boston, ticket. But there's this interesting economic challenge where, we've ultimately been subsidizing these small airports all over the country for a long time because there is a need for them, for public service, for them to be there, but they simply don't garnish the commercial demand. And I think this can actually change that, because the airport's still going to be necessary as a hub, as a parking space for these devices, but it's going to make that travel option that much more accessible for anyone that's got a pad or a place that's suitable to just vertically land or take off from. And it really opens up the dynamic where instead of somebody, getting a car to go to the Lebanon airport, they'll just order the flight and it's going to come pick them up, either at their property or very near their property, and then take them on their trip and they're done. So it's really interesting prospect to sort of revolutionize air travel and rural transport as we have come to know it.
Yeah. Sort of, to sort of close the loop on Beta, we're watching the evolution of travel and how it's going to change the nature of travel. We're especially in Vermont watching the evolution of employment opportunities at Beta Technologies. I mean, their initial IPO hit is $9 billion too big a number? That might be too big a number. I can't remember.
I think it was $1 billion. I think it was $1 billion. They raised $1 billion.
Yeah.
With the IPO.
Yeah. So lots of new employment opportunities, and then lastly, of course, we're watching Ryan's stock.
Right.
Or at least Ryan's watching Ryan's stock.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and that coupled with, OnLogic has done some pretty incredible things. It had just continuous explosive growth here in Vermont with their new facility up there, which is beautiful, by the way. They've got a really nice, footprint in terms of their green status. They are pushing more and more power to the edge in terms of compute and capability with these ruggedized devices that they have, which is impacting all kinds of industries, from medical to mining to ocean exploration. Then we've got the robotics company, Rugged.
That's right. Who was a guest on the Innovato 2 podcast? Were they not? Wasn't our man? Here we are, two old guys.
Yeah, right. No, actually, so we had no, Rigorous is the robotics company.
There we go.
And yes, we had a guest which is doing the space electronics and power devices, which is Rugged Micropower.
Yes, Rugged Micropower, who were guests on the Innovato 2 podcast.
There we go. Yeah, Rugged Micropower. So like all these things, it's pretty like they're all on the cutting edge, right? These companies are leading the charge. And there's companies that a lot of people don't know about. I don't think we've ever talked about, but like Core Power, which is like the world leader in super large power storage batteries.
Talk more about that. Yeah, I mean, I think so I've been reading about them, but we have yet to have them on the podcast. By the way, before we do so, shout out to Paul Shepard. It's Paul Shepard, Rugged Micropower, who joined us during the spring. And they're another company to watch out for. They completed successfully the Launch VT accelerator program, and then it just come on the show. And we should check back in with him, and to just see what's new for them for 2026. But continue on battery power. This is an important one.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of environmental challenges with power storage, and so Core Power, they had I forget the exact structure of the merger or acquisition, but they had in some way absorbed Northern Reliability, and in order to bring two sort of complementary pieces together. And they're considered one of, if not the global leader in large energy storage. So, if you're thinking about, how do we make these renewable solutions work? A big key to it is being able to store the energy efficiently to deploy it when and as needed. And so that, again, Blue Owl Vermont is the home for this global leader.
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong. Their technology improves when it is placed in its own sort of grid, so to speak, right? Which is important in a deeply rural place like Vermont and all in northern New England, where we can actually daisy chain these units across great distances and actually create a decentralized grid in doing so.
Absolutely. Yeah. So their products are used in very extreme isolated use cases and can be applied in very innovative ways of really strengthening and enhancing our grid and our community access to power.
Awesome. I know you're excited to do it, and I am too. I just have to ask you. We haven't, you and I haven't really interviewed for this show in a few months, and so I've just been dying to get into conversation with you. Watching and I want to first talk about the national and international consequences and bring it down to Vermont, right? Like, how can we in Vermont best leverage, what's going on right now? Watching a couple of things I'm watching, right? One is the proliferation of artificial intelligence, where it's working and where it's not. And then also separate from that, but together, because the same people from our political sphere and our large company segment are, they're one and the same, but like what's going on with cryptocurrency, the use of cryptocurrency, and then of course its consequences on the proliferation of blockchain and other associated technologies. I had a long conversation with our 2024 guest, Justin Loringer, who's a blockchain expert, recently off air. And we were sharing concerns for basically just watching how, in my opinion, and this is now just Scott's opinion, the amount of graft that's taking place and thievery, utilizing cryptocurrency is disappointing. When we started the year off with a new administration in Washington, I was really excited about the idea that the more we bring the tech into the light, and of course we can couple it with blockchain technology, this becomes extremely secure for any and all forms of currency exchange. And by daylighting it, if you will, it becomes the norm, right? It becomes proliferated, and we all get to use it and take advantage of it. As a real estate investor, developer, I thought this is going to be the future for acquiring investors, right? And interacting with investors and ensuring that my investors, their money is protected, right? And instead, I feel like it's more deeply gone into the vein of oligarchs and mafiosi and, just blatant corruption at the highest levels of not only American government, but like many governments. And I'm like, this is not what I thought would be good.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much to unpack. It's the reality is that what we continue to see is the reverberation of all the things that give crypto its stigma. And yet it's like this conundrum that, we sit at where, we have this cognitive dissonance in everything today, right? And the reality is that, yeah, crypto creates open, transparent ledgers and systems of accountability. But if people are just blatantly willing to be robbed, then, that's what's going to happen. If people are willing to gamble, that's what's going to happen. And the things that get the most news space are the things that are sensational. And it's unfortunate. I'm still optimistic that the underlying value of the technology is going to empower people to do the right things. But unfortunately, a lot of money flows into utilizing these technologies to do what the people with the money want it to do. Right. And it's kind of that same, like if we could really get people to wrap their head around it just enough to empower themselves, we'd be all powerful.
Yeah.
But since we don't, there's a vacuum there, and the people with the power will use the tool that amplifies their power. And it's not different than money itself, right? The Bretton Woods conference or summit and the whole, narrow list of people and organizations that define how we use and disseminate the US dollar globally. That's not very well understood by anybody, right?
By design, it's not meant to be understood. Economists debate that understanding, right?
Yeah.
People who are deeply entrenched in economics.
Driven by data. Driven by technology. Driven by community development. Driven by the need to get results for your project. SM Graves Associates. Delivering real estate development to you, including project management and pre-development services with a keen focus on delivering community-oriented projects. We build profitable projects that respond to the needs of your neighborhood. Join the SMG family. Find us at smgravesassociates.com.
I want to make it more clear. My problem isn't that, as an example, that our president of the United States, Donald Trump, is corrupting crypto. My problem, because crypto in and of itself isn't corrupted, it's a technology. My problem is, generally speaking, when somebody becomes the president of the United States, the precedent for the last 250 years has been you stop making money. Right. In the ways that you traditionally made money. You divest yourself. Doesn't mean you have to forever, you know, I no longer own any of my companies forever. But while you're president, you're divesting yourself and your responsibility on those companies. They go to somebody else for that time. They're managed by somebody else for that time. You don't have these little side bets going on.
Right.
That's my issue, is that somebody decided, and he's not the only one, but they've decided to pull that into crypto, as opposed to saying, hey, I'm the new president of the United States. Listen, we're going to daylight this tech, right? It's accepted currency. I want banks. Here's how we're going to roll out in a short period of time the widespread use through blockchain technology of secure transactions, right? Like, to me, then overnight, right, it's funny because you're not wrong. I don't disagree with you. It's created, what's happening right now is creating opportunity. Yeah. Because there's a sucker born every minute. But we would have created at least as much, if not more, you know, opportunity by legitimizing it. And I think that would have had much longer lasting effects. Many of the economists that I follow, including Paul Krugman, you know, I feel like he's a little harder on tech. Maybe it's our difference in age or whatever. He's a little harder on the tech itself. I kind of feel like he wants to do away forever. He doesn't feel like it's ever going to be anything other than a gimmick. But I can see as a technology tool, its value, right? And why we should implement it why it should become an accepted practice. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe we have to look at it less like a tech tool and more like a practice, because it's that whole thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point too. I mean, it's really, I think this whole story is walking in parallel with the challenge that we have in general, trust in institutions, right? It's like, yeah, there's lots of institutions that have done really good things for us, but the things we hear about in the news are the shady deals, the embezzlements, the breaches of trust. And that's what weighs most heavily on our conscience. And so we have a, historical low of confidence and trust in our public institutions, whether that's government or nonprofits that are serving a mission or whatever it is. People simply, not as many of them, trust these institutions and organizations anymore. And we have that very same challenge with crypto, is that, at its core, it can and does do all these really interesting and really powerful things. But what's in the news is simply all the breaches of trust, all the scams, all the errors in judgment that occur, whether it's somebody maliciously doing something or people playing a game with their money and more of them losing than win, right? And the story is great. Somebody won. They have something worth $1 million now. And underlying, we also recognize that that means a whole bunch of people don't really have, a lot of money. And, they threw away, whether it's $10 or $100 or $1,000 or whatever it was in the process. It didn't just make all boats rise. Somebody got the short end of that stick. And that's, unfortunately, the reality of economics long before crypto came around, and the challenge that we have in realizing that cryptography and cryptographic protection and securing of value in ledgers is a natural evolution, but it's also an institution. It's a technology and an institution that people do need to either understand or believe in, because not everybody, while they could understand it, I have faith that all people have the capacity to understand these things. Not all people have the time to develop that capacity in their life or the interest to develop that capacity. And in lieu of that capacity, they need to trust.
Well, they need to, we that understand it need to create the institution that can be trusted.
Right. Like a bank that actually says, oh, this is how we do things now.
So hence what I'm saying, right? That when I say, I know I'm using crude language, right? But when I say daylighted, I mean that it's the daylighting is the institutions, the creation and the proliferation of the institution that people go, listen, man, I don't know how the tech works, but I know I can trust this. It's what the FDIC did 85 years ago. Right.
And at its core, this is what we need, that combination of people that know roughly why and how they can trust a thing, and the people that truly understand how it works, needs to be the foundation of the proliferation of AI and robotics. And that's where, to bring it to where Vermont has the opportunity, is again that sort of staying in touch with nature, staying in touch with community, staying in touch with who we are as people, and still being connected with that technology. We can not just develop technology for the end result, but develop technology for the process and the way that it gets implemented. And that's where I'm alluding to, AI being this big umbrella term that kind of encompasses automation and starts to encompass robotics and all these things. But also, we had another guest on this year, Peter Voss, talking a lot about artificial general intelligence and talking about the democratization of AI by having these models that don't require so much data and so much processing and so much power and so much memory to be able to do very similar things in an even better way of doing them. And that all has to come together to create an institution in these emerging technologies that we can trust to take us forward to a good place.
Yeah, and then Peter, excellent guest, by the way, that helped us to really understand too that we need to a better way to the way I saw it is a better way to utilize artificial intelligence, right? So that it is creating really the bionic worker. It's taking it doesn't matter what it's taking from me or adding to my work life or my daily life, right? It's the point that I get to choose, and that choice is made iteratively over the long period of time, where I'm kind of, establishing a working relationship with my bot, right? And I liked the way that plays in my imagination, right? Over time, ever since we talked about it. We're not seeing it proliferated in the marketplace quite that way, though, are we? And some of the holes in artificial intelligence are being seen, right? And I don't know that the holes were always there on the tool side, on the technology side, because the iterative nature of these large language models, or the machine what do they call LLMs?
Large
yeah, thank you. Yes, machine advanced large language models, or machine learning models, I should say. Yeah. The issue is, I think, placed where, and this is again where policy is bad and the tool isn't necessarily the issue at all, but and this is what I'm nervous about. I see a 2026 where a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. I don't think that the bots are ready to replace those people per se in a lot of cases, but I think large industry, I don't think cares. I think they're applying a very 19th century idea of industrialization and creating efficiency through letting people go. It's like, well, we're going to launch it anyways. You know what I mean? Because we're seeing where, okay, AI is useful, but it's not necessarily ready to replace everybody, nor, and here's the other thing, we should be having a national conversation, an international, global conversation on effective choices to use with such a game-changing tech. Right? I know there's a lot to unpack there.
Well, I think there's a lot of things that get mashed together in our heads under this AI umbrella. And that's where I think it's really challenging, because the AI that we're playing with and experiencing is very superficial. And in many ways, it has a capability to augment us, but it really does need a person to kind of, connect with it and do it and make things interesting from it.
And we in turn need to learn how to better use it.
Yeah.
That's what makes it.
And that's the AI that also, I think, for Peter's example, is likely to be evolved past by other forms of AI, right? But on the other side, as far as what's really impacting the economy, is where the machine learning side comes in. And that's where it's not so much a predictive input, generative input output kind of scenario. We're talking about, okay, we have a need, a mine that needs to have resources extracted, right? And what you have is the ability to gather all that data, make assessments really quickly, make predictions really quickly, make prescriptions really quickly about how to address all of those needs and details, and how to build the robotics and machines to go ahead and do what you need to do. And in those scenarios where you're taking potentially hundreds or thousands of people from the workforce and replacing them with machines with one or two people that run those machines, those are the things that are having a big impact. And frankly, that's not really that new.
Not at all.
That's been impacting the pits and falls of our economy for, I would even go so far as to say, a couple decades. But especially, the past 10, 15, 20 years, we've seen this constant iteration of large industrial scale use of the machine and replacing the worker. And that's what's going to have the most impact, right? Self-driving cars is the biggest, most visible shock that we're likely to see. And that's not the generative AI that we're playing with on our phones. That's large scale machine learning being applied currently and over the past many years, and then implementing it with the proper machine robotics and safety elements so that it can be deployed. And all of a sudden, we don't have the Teamsters anymore, essentially, right? Like, they don't have any power anymore because the companies don't need them to work.
Yeah, but it's not going to be cool until they're actually like the Johnny Cabs in Total Recall. Hey, Quaid.
Yeah.
Get your ass to Mars.
Yeah. Yeah. So, those are the things that are really having an impact. I mean, the office worker being replaced by AI, that's kind of, I think you kind of said it before, it's more of a narrative to scare employees into being, more.
But that in and of itself is bad. If employers, we're only hearing in deep reports of that. Okay, this isn't at this. I don't think this has become a movement across the country, but some of it might be self-inflicted. I mean, people are just like nervous. I mean, some of the early surveys that I've been reviewing through my Substack on the subject, from journalists that are focused on technology, is saying a lot of people are sort of self-inflicting that on themselves that work for some of our most well-known tech companies around the country. Yeah. That they're just nervous, or if they work for manufacturers, even if they're not lying people, mind you, but they're analysts, they're researchers, right? I mean, if you're a researcher or an analyst, I have to say, like, I'd be a little nervous. If your job is to distill, to refine, right?
Yeah.
Then I think you remain valuable. And then the only question is, does the company you work for see that, right? Because often large corporations can be myopic, right? Even small independent companies can be myopic depending on who's at the helm. But if your job is to basically just aggregate data, you're in trouble,
right?
Because that's where I think we make bionic workers. I want the bot to do the mundane work for me so that I can spend the majority of my time strategizing, creating, right? Like morphing, taking things and reworking them into something new. That's the next step, whether it's music or whatever, Another thing that we're watching carefully in 2026, I know I am, is speaking of music, but really all forms of art. I got into a great conversation this weekend with some friends over this, all of us former executives, either of record companies or some other kind of creative music media based company, some folks in licensing or what have you. And on my Substack, I wrote an article that was heavily influenced. Ted Goya recently wrote on the phenomenon of the teenage idol in the 50s and the consequences of, cheap, readily available music, what it had on artistry in general, iteratively from the late 50s to now. And it just got me in this whole stream of consciousness thing, thinking about, you know, like the intellectual infantilization that we've talked about earlier, and I'm worried about in all creative arts as a result of the average person, right? Maybe not an artist, but the average person saying, "Oh, well, you know, the AI bot will create something," right? That people don't recognize the value in going through the creative process and what that really does to your head. You know what I mean? Ironically enough, especially for the people working in tech, right? Yeah. And so that's kind of an interesting thing I think we're going to be dealing with a lot more as the year unfolds. And of course, it'll be for years to come, but 2026 is going to be the first full year where everything sort of has set in, right? The reality of artificial intelligence, the convergence of social movements. I mean, we're starting to see a lot of people start to say, well, you know, what is the United States, right? Is the two-party system working for me? You know, people are asking really fundamental questions based on whether or not this year was good for their households financially.
Yeah.
In a way that I feel like I'm just, you know, as I'm talking to people from all over the country and especially here in Vermont, I don't know, maybe it's just because we were our own republic for 9 years, but we got some pretty radical people here, you know?
Yeah.
Radical ideas.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, radical and willing to do the work. I think that's the key. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are really ready to get down to business and make something happen. There's just not a lot of people, right?
By the way, are we going to do it with or without the existing, you know, captive insurance and securities industry, which is a juggernaut from a standpoint of assets in this state, but it's really what we came to find is really a closed off world for the most part.
Yeah, it is a very small, very niche sector, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. Can we do it without them? Is a really good question, because, you know, at a certain point, like, it's all about economies of scale. And if all we're doing is our own little thing in our own little commune, that doesn't really work. So how do we ultimately scale the vision, the innovation, the generosity, and, you know, take what we're doing in many ways, building these brands that serve globally, and parlay that, you know, the reason that those companies decided to be here, and how do we parlay that in the world, and interconnect with those other niches of thought leadership that are doing that.
So is that to say you're aware of investments that are being made by the captive industry or securities industry here in Vermont in tech?
I'm not.
That's my thing is, what do we do when it's just a closed world off, where there's a curtain between the tech energy that's going on in the state and the captives?
I don't think it's so closed off as that. I think it's more of the captive industry is a tool.
Yep.
And like all the other tools, you know, folks have to be aware of it and come to figure out how to use it. And where innovation is happening, I've had many conversations where there is investment going into innovation and they didn't even know captive existed, right? And so that start of that conversation is potentially what triggers the interconnection there, where now there's a new innovator who realizes, oh, there's also a market here that I can address, or this is how to address the market that I want to address, and that's the pathway. And from there, you end up with various kinds of investments into that product or service or result or technology, you know, looking at things that bring us closer together to realizing the true value of a thing in terms of environmental impact and protection. And that ultimately ends up creating a magnet for more investment. And big companies end up realizing, or without even realizing it, their risk managers end up leveraging these tools for their benefit. And so, this is where that profit conversation can become fruitful, is ultimately if we start looking at the real value of things and the real costs of things, and we're not obscuring the costs to our environment. If we're doing that math right, then it makes good, profitable sense to do the right thing. Right. And that's what I think we have come to learn and believe in Vermont and in other places as well. And I think that's where we can continue to move forward is doing the work to uncover the real costs of things and showcase the real value of them. And ultimately that's where this captive financial markets, those things start to come together, and they don't care if it's good or right or wrong. They just care if it's profitable. And if profitable is good and right, then that's how we can have the impact we want.
So we design it at the grassroots level. It's both profitable and right. And that's what gets proliferated.
That's right.
Unleashed on the world. I like it. See, that's what I'm talking about. Well, this has been a great conversation. Any other predictions you want to make about 2026? Will Ryan Munn shave his beard? Will Scott Graves grow a mustache? Inquiring minds want to know.
I don't think I'm going to shave.
This is worthless, by the way. Why did I even go to facial hair? Because this is an audio podcast. And, well, actually at Interchain Live, it's not. So actually forget what I just said.
Yeah. If we post the video, we'll see. But here, I can get close to the microphone and a little chin scratch.
Oh, that's unnerving. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think, I don't know if I'm ready for predictions yet. Maybe I need to see what the turn of the year brings us and come up with some predictions to share in January. But
Vermont tech community, find new and improved ways so that Vermont can feed itself and feed the rest of New England. We have a huge opportunity. We need to be more independent regionally.
There we go.
Export less food in here, right? I mean, the food prices have gone up significantly, which is dramatically affecting Vermonters. I think we also need to have innovation in some of our major systems, not least of which is health insurance coverage.
Yeah.
Boy, I have some people real close to me, professionally and personally, who as of November 1st or thereabouts have been dropped by their insurers because their insurers are pulling out of the state of Vermont. Well, one of our problems is it is a small market, right?
Yeah.
We don't have tens of millions of people as our state population. And so this has such a huge effect on dragging our statewide economy down. And individuals don't realize their full economic potential. And that's not what certainly the tech community and growing the tech community is all about.
Right. Yeah. We've got some real challenges, and I guess my one prediction would be a little vague, but I think that we are going to see some innovation in this area in terms of health coverage and the way we approach those things, and there might be some companies coming out of Vermont that are doing that because Vermont has the need to be served and that opportunity to connect through scale on, making money by doing well.
And doing well by our people.
Yeah.
With that, we will end the end of 2025 Rural Tech Extravaganza here on the Innovato2 podcast.
Yeah. Appreciate everyone who's listened, and hopefully there'll be more for you to tune into. Check back.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Find Innovato2 on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe to Interchain Live on YouTube for video podcasts. Innovato2 is a collaboration of Interchain Live and The Media Project. With fast-moving and sweeping changes to our economy in the works, we all need to reconsider how our investments are best placed. At Partners in Housing, we believe your money is best placed locally. Utilized to increase value and provide stable and desirable housing to your neighbors. Contact Partners in Housing to find out how you can participate in local housing opportunities by joining the Partners in Housing Fund. Look us up at partnersinhousingvt.com or email us at partnersinhousingvt@gmail.com.